I'd have to say what I really enjoy about Happy State Bank is the morale that we have. Part of that goes back to the ownership that we talked about. Everybody understands as an owner, we're going to think like owners and not like managers, and we truly have each other's back each and every day. So that just the teamwork, everyone works so hard for each other, knowing that the ultimate goal is that each one of our customers is going to leave this bank knowing that we have given them everything we have as bankers to exceed any expectations they had out of our bank.
We would like to invite the people with the 811 Safe Digging Week to please come forward. Did you all block them out of the room? Is there no one here from 811 Digging? Well, that will make this proclamation very short. We'll move back and begin our meeting. They're out there. Before we begin the meeting today, let's think about those lives lost for a moment. Thank you. We don't, of course, know the circumstances, but to their families, our condolences. Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Amarillo City Commission, held on the third floor of City Hall each Tuesday, this Tuesday at 3 p.m. First item of business on today's agenda is the minutes. Attached is a copy of the minutes. Those minutes are regarding the meeting last week of August 6th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move for approval of minutes as presented.
I second that motion.
A motion and a second for the minutes as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to move back to the presentation on the agenda number 14. We have, of course, a very large group of interested people here. We're going to move that to the front of the line and talk about that. And so I would ask first I'll read this presentation and discussion from representatives of the proposed Amarillo Recreational Complex, the ARC. The ARC is a public-private partnership backed by a number of community organizations and formed in recognition and support of a need for a comprehensive community recreational complex in Amarillo. We would like to recognize the folks that are here to present today. There are several, and we'd ask first that the representatives designated by the group to come forward and make the first part of this presentation, please.
My name is William Ware. I live at 3012 South Ong. Trevor Cavanis, 2410 Lipscomb.
Welcome.
Mayor Harpole, City Commission, we thank you for your time and for listening to our proposal today. We are advocates of sports in Amarillo and representing many groups here today. We are here to respectfully ask the City Commission issue a bond for $30.9 million to build an all-encompassing sports complex in southeast Amarillo. The Amarillo Recreational Complex, or ARC, will be a one-of-a-kind and much-needed facility, featuring baseball, softball, volleyball, basketball, and other recreational facilities, aquatic center, recreational pool, and hiking and bike trails. The soccer fields in the proposed facility are already out here, and there's a one-of-a-kind golf course, or 2 golf courses across the street. This is a public-private partnership to minimize the expense to the taxpayer and minimize operational budgets, and to show the public that there are people that want to support this endeavor. It's critical to the success of this program. We are well on our way of raising money for our goal. The need for this facility in Amarillo is tremendous, and I'd like Trevor to speak more to that.
Thank you, William. I think as you part of the City Commission, you're well aware of the needs that Amarillo has. And under the Parks and Rec recommended facility development standards through their 2012 master plan, on one section of it, it shows existing facilities in Amarillo, baseball fields, the existing, we have 12. Recommended by year 2020 is 30. Soccer fields, we currently have 44, recommended 62. Softball fields, we currently have 20, recommended 36. Volleyball areas, we currently have 18, recommended is 39. Multi-use courts, basketball and volleyball, we have 11, recommended is 20. And this park, as we're calling it, Amarillo Recreation Complex, is been put together by a group, several special interest groups that have been working for many, many years individually to get this accomplished. We've recently come together and come to the realization that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and we feel like we have a critical mass of individuals. I think all of our groups combined touch on somewhere around 40,000 kids or participants in this, and with that then there's families, and that goes out to 100,000 plus individuals in the city of Amarillo that would be touched by a complex such as this. Our population has grown by 50 to 60,000 since 1990. We have not had a bond election or a recreational facility such as this passed since the late 70s. The one exception to that would be the Rick Klein Fields that were not passed through a bond election, but they were developed in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005. But in that time, we've grown our population by 60,000. By 2020, we should grow another 20,000. We're at a little over 1% increase of population growth rate each year. We feel like now is the time to catch up. You can't go 40 years and not invest in facilities in a community. Part of my background, I have children that are 7 and under, but they're involved in basketball and softball, baseball, soccer, and we travel all over the city and go to the different parks that are wonderful. They are lacking in parking and some other just overall infrastructure. We're busting at the seams, and that's very evident. Also, when you have multiple children, you're running all over the city. It would be very nice to consolidate all of that in one location. I was also a swimmer in high school, or all the way from age 9 through 18. That time, Amarillo still did not have a municipal pool. It's been 30 plus years people have been talking about a municipal pool. That time there was the Maverick Club was open, the Town Club, and WT had a 50-meter pool. Since then, Maverick Club has closed their pool. The WT has changed theirs to more recreation. So there's 2 pools that did have competitive meets that are gone. Now we have the Town Club, and that only has 3 lanes and severely inhibits growth in aquatics, and especially for a city of our size of 200,000. So the need has been there for many, many years. Like I said before, this is part of the Parks and Rec master plan, and they have endorsed this project. This is a one-stop shop for civic activities. The ARC will do so many things for the entire Amarillo area and will be available to every person in our community. With that, I think William has something exciting to show everybody.
Thank you, Trevor. The ARC will literally be something for everyone. Young, old, physically fit, or physically challenged. This facility will touch everybody in Amarillo. We want everybody here today to actually see a rendering of what the facility would look like and hear what members of our community have said about something like this.
For the first time ever, Amarillo has the opportunity to build an all-encompassing sports complex, enhancing quality of life for generations to come. The Amarillo Recreation Complex, or the ARC, will create a place where citizens of all ages and backgrounds can come together for the love of the game.
I have never even thought it imaginable to have a facility such as this where it would provide students, children, parents, adults with that unique opportunity to have sporting events at one central location.
The ARC will feature something for everyone, young, old, physically fit, or physically challenged. This one-of-a-kind facility will meet the needs of our entire community.
Having a facility like this would be so great because the ones we have in Amarillo are at the gyms, and the shallow part of the gyms, they're not very big. You can accommodate maybe 12 to 15 people comfortably, and having a therapy pool that we could go to would really impact a lot of lives.
The ARC will feature a state-of-the-art indoor aquatic center with a competitive pool, health and fitness pool, diving well, and a recreation pool with a slide and lazy river. Currently, Amarillo is the only city its size without a year-round competition pool.
If we had a pool, we would be able to practice whenever we needed to, and we would be able to host meets, and it'd be more convenient for everyone, and all the swimmers on our team. And I think there would be more people that would join.
From professional athletes to recreational players, the ARC will serve as a sports hub for local and regional teams.
Just bringing people in and having the facilities to accommodate a tournament. Volleyball itself could be a $5 to $7 million economic impact on this community if we had the facilities to support that kind of activity.
Located in southeast Amarillo, the ARC will include the indoor aquatic center, along with baseball fields, softball fields, basketball courts, volleyball courts, and a hike and bike trail. The ARC will incorporate the existing Rick Klein Sports Complex, which has brand new soccer fields, several multi-use fields, and a baseball complex.
Amarillo doesn't have a place where I can do all of my training in one area, such as swimming, biking, and running. So if we could have a facility such as that, it would be awesome.
The ARC will be a one-stop shop for athletes and for families.
Sadie plays volleyball, Gracie swims, and Carrie rides his bike. So it's going to be nice to have everything in one place.
It'll also eliminate the need to drive around town.
I think it's going to be nice for all of us to be able to do that.
The ARC is a public-private partnership backed by a number of community organizations. These groups have pledged their support, recognizing the growing need for a community sports complex. Pledge your support now and help change the lives of families throughout Amarillo for decades to come.
It's for me. It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me. It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me.
It's for me. It's for me.
It's for you.
Wow, was that cool? It is for us, and if that video gets you excited, I can't tell you the feeling you'll have when this thing is completed and every basketball court or 16 volleyball games are going on and whistles are blowing and major tournament is going on, or a swim meet, the first buzzer goes off, and it's a 3-day invitational hosting, statewide or region-wide events or umpire says play ball, and just large tournaments that can be brought to this area will come. And that will bring nothing but economic benefit to Amarillo as a whole. We feel compelled as private businesses and citizens to help fund and provide leadership for the projects, as William mentioned earlier. We feel like it'll help the quality of life in Amarillo and the entire Panhandle region. This isn't just Amarillo, it's the entire Panhandle region. We'll be able to draw people from all over to make Amarillo more of at least a weekend destination for maybe some of those that are in the surrounding communities. The increase, as William said, we're asking for a $30.9 million bond, and if you run the math on that, it would be a tax increase of 2.5 cents per $100,000 valuation. So $25 per 100,000 valuation is what this means to the public. And we don't take that lightly, but that is maybe 2 large pizzas or anything else that you could equate to $25 for people to sacrifice and to then have the benefit of this quality of life and this great need that our community has. Okay, I'll turn it over to William.
Thanks, Trevor. As a triathlete, kind of noticed a need for a place to train, and I've listened to a lot of the other people. And in addition to a place to swim, we're going to need other facilities to run and bike and also do other sorts of workouts. This will give everybody a place to train, from grade schools, middle schools, high schools. All sports teams can come out and use these facilities. Other groups, such as the hospitals, the universities, every group in Amarillo that's needed a facility like this, water therapy and swim lessons can be done here. Of course, when you bring in out-of-town people, you increase the hotel-motel tax, new receipts at the restaurants, and hopefully some retail shopping. Trevor pointed out this is going to affect at least 40,000 kids in Amarillo. I think that's just a start. That's something that a lot of the studies that we've seen have shown initially. I want to also point out the location we're proposing is ideal. It's free and clear land. It's easy to get to. Our longest drive time we mapped was 15 minutes in traffic. It's a wonderful location to do something like this, and it's really the last large available spot in Amarillo. We're really excited about the location if this goes forward. I want to tell you the most interesting thing about this entire project is the community partners coming together. For years, these groups have been going to the city, going to the Parks Department, asking for their own facilities for their own groups. And we have finally realized that by working together, it benefits everybody. It's absolutely amazing the support we've seen since we brought the groups together. And I'd like to point out that these groups have been working for so long, and I want to hear from them very briefly to show why they need this and the work they've done. So if you would give us a few minutes, I'd like to hear from the head of all these groups. I'd like to start with Jimmy Lackey with Kids Inc. Sure.
Welcome, Mr. Lackey. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. 28 months ago, I stood right here and voluntarily but reluctantly pulled us out of a project with you all for a downtown rec center, and honestly, I didn't think we'd ever have a chance to get this done again. And like these two have said, for the last several weeks, we've spent the summer sitting around a table, and I see a lot of my colleagues here today, and I can't tell you how much fun it's been to sit at the table with all these groups, one common goal, and everybody trying to get something. We all understand we're not going to get everything we want, but we've reconciled and conceded to one another that this is the best thing we can put forth for the good of the whole. And so for me to stand here and babble on much longer would be worthless, other than to tell you, you know as well as I do, this is a project that's needed. We've just made it bigger than the one we did 2 years ago. This one benefits everybody, and I think when you put something together that benefits everybody, that's the way you should go. So that'd be my 2 cents worth, other than to say, from our perspective at Kids Incorporated, we fully endorse this project and would ask that you place it on the ballot in November.
How many participants do you all represent?
Our organization had a little over 15,700 participants last year. Played almost 6,000 games. We would have almost a little over 4,300 participants alone that would just use an indoor courts facility like you saw in the project. That doesn't count The soccer fields that you're building out there right now, I can't wait to utilize. Those can be multi-use fields. We can run track on those. We can play flag football on those. We can play soccer on those. It's a complex. And, you know, we have John Stiff Park, and we make it into a complex, but this one is designed to be a complex, a true amateur-style complex with some competitive amenities. And I think when you bring the two worlds together, you've got the best of both of them. So
That's a lot of folks. Thank you, Jim.
Jimmy, is that unduplicated head count? Do you know?
head count for us unduplicated is just over 10,000, and some of those are duplicated to total participation around 15,700. You bet.
Next, I'd like to have Lenny Lovejoy with Amarillo Area Youth Baseball Foundation talk about someone that's been working a long time on this. Lenny.
Welcome, Laney.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today representing Amarillo Youth Baseball Foundation and to show you some of the needs. There's only 6 fields that are solely dedicated to baseball in Amarillo right now, that being the Rick Klein Complex. There's obviously a need for much more. One of the leagues that uses that facility is West Texas Youth Baseball. They just hosted a state tournament back in the summer, and there were 162 teams, and so there was a need for 27 fields. So we spread out, had to convert adult softball fields into baseball fields, and had to use 9 in Canyon, some of the city of Canyon, some at West Texas A&M University. So there's obviously a need. Of those 162 teams that played, 91 of them were from out of town. And so right there, you can begin to see the economic impact. There's no real formula that we've found around here in Amarillo for doing economic impact, but in just talking to teams that come in here and teams at other tournament locations, excuse me, a good average that we found is about $500 per family when they go to one of these tournaments. And you look at 91 teams from out of town with 10 to 12 players per team at $500 per family, and you can quickly see and do the economic impact. There's nearly 700 teams participating out there in tournaments this year, and also 158 in the spring and fall league combined. So obviously you can see by looking at the video the benefits to the kids and for the baseball community, and we just feel like it's time to do the expansion and get more fields for local kids and you know, draw in more out of town teams. And so therefore we respectfully request the City Commission to put it on the ballot for bond election in November.
How many do you represent? How many members do you have to participate?
We don't have a league. We are the Amarillo Foundation, and we're a 501c3 for just enhancing facilities.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The Panhandle Aquatics Association has been around for about 10 years working for a pool, but their spokesperson, Patsy Walker, has probably been working on this for over 30. She started when she was 15.
Welcome.
Thank you. The elder statesman. I am Patsy Walker, and today I represent the multi-use, the multi-purpose aquatic center. The need and the benefits for this aquatic center are much greater than my time allowance that I was given. But as a senior citizen, we need a healthy living pool for water aerobics, for water therapy, rehab, after strokes, surgeries, and accidents. The Lazy River Play Pool will bring a great recreation component to the complex, which along with school and birthday parties bring usage fees to the pool. Healthy, active lifestyles for our children equal less obesity problems. All of us need to be concerned about drown-proofing our young children. Our Learn to Swim programs in Amarillo are woefully inadequate. We are concerned that our first responders, fire, police, EMTs, have a place to learn and practice water rescues. The most often mentioned need is the competitive swimming component, and yes, that need is very dire, but it's certainly not the only one. School teams must limit their number of swimmers currently because of lack of pool space. Schools, both public and private, and club teams, which now use the overcrowded space at the town club, could grow in numbers and pay those usage fees to the city. We have a growing number of triathletes in our community needing training space, witness William Ware. Adult swimmers who swim for health and competition are called master swimmers, and they have no place to work out or compete. As for economic impact, Amarillo cannot host any kind of competitive swim meet at this time. School teams, club teams, masters, and triathletes. Any and all of these could bring many real dollars to our city when we can host them in this beautiful, beautiful facility. Therefore, we respectfully submit that the City Commission place the ARC project on the ballot for a November 2013 bond election.
Thank you.
Our next comments are from Bob Medina with High Plains Fast Pitch. Bob, here.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I know I've spoken before at the commission meetings. As far as impact and what is needed, our girls need a permanent place to play. We currently only have 2 fields that are regulation sized for fast pitch softball. There are 2 converted fields over at Thompson. Our current need is for 6 or 7. We serve over 1,200 girls per year in 2 fall seasons. That does not include our tournaments. We usually host anywhere between 4 and 5 tournaments per year. Also, this last month, we also hosted a state tournament. We had 44 teams, 29 of which were from out of town. 22 of those traveled more than 75 miles. So you have hotel stays, restaurant meals, shopping, and whatnot. As a representative of a High Plains Fast Pitch, I ask that you please place this on the ballot, and I believe this will put forth a mark that you guys as council people and the mayor support youth sports in Amarillo.
Mr. Medina, yes. You should be complimented in your group on your persistence. They were one of the groups that came here, and it's the last time we filled this room like this. The young ladies and their families talking about the need. Certainly, the restriction has always been monetary, and as you joined with this group of dedicated people to strive towards this, we appreciate your efforts and your patience and your persistence. So now that I've received over 400 emails from your group, and I've also recognized the people in public that constantly bring this topic up. We want you to know that we are listening, and I'm glad that you're working so closely with the other groups. That is important to us.
Yes, it's very important, and it's going to serve everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of other groups, we want to make sure we include the YMCA. So Tom Clark, do you have a second to come up and give us 30 seconds?
Mr. Mayor, Commission.
Welcome.
Thank you. The YMCA respectfully asks that you put the ARC on the ballot. We serve 1,100 kids in baseball in the spring league. We'll have 1,000 in our fall league. We had 1,800 kids in our basketball program. Another 600 kids in the Wii sports, which is t-ball and soccer and things like that. Also, the YMCA maintains 2 indoor pools that are used for Arthritis Foundation and rehab with senior citizens, and they're aging. This is not, and we also maintain our own baseball complex. It is aging, and if it rains, it looks good. And with the cost of water being what it's going to do to continue to escalate, this is much needed for the YMCA and the kids that we support. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
And last but not least, Dean Crump with Amarillo Juniors Volleyball.
Good afternoon. My name is Dean Crump. I'm here to represent not only Amarillo Juniors Volleyball, but the volleyball community itself. We're one of 6 clubs, I guess, in Amarillo. And today we serve approximately 1,000 girls play club volleyball in Amarillo. And I think the success of our club and high school teams is indicative of the quality of our organizations and the services we provide those girls. So each year we struggle to accommodate these kids because of the lack of gym space. So we struggle to win bids to host large tournaments because we don't have adequate gym space, and especially in the same area that accommodates a large number of people. Each year, the volleyball community in Amarillo logs over 3,000 hours of gym time. So it's pretty significant, and that represents about $75,000 in rentals. So, or we could call it operating income for this new facility if we wanted to do that. But we desperately need gym space to accommodate not only volleyball, but basketball and adult leagues and anything indoor activity. So the volleyball community respectfully requests the City Commission replace the arts project on the ballot for the November 13th bond election.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank each and every one of y'all for coming up. As you can see, everybody has one voice here, and we're all on the same page supporting the ARC, and feel that we need to financially support the project with private funding, and each one of these groups has done so and is continuing to do so as we continue to raise dollars privately. This will only help ease the economic burden to the citizens of Amarillo. A public-private partnership just makes sense. We will all gain from this. This will add significant value to our economy and business climate as a whole. The question our community should ask ourselves is, are we for the betterment of Amarillo or are we not? Sometimes it takes a lot of homework and a leap of faith to get from here to there. We've sat back long enough, we've done our homework, we have tremendous community support. Now it's time to take the leap. We respectfully ask the City Commission to issue a bond for $30.9 million, or consider issuing that bond. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
At this point, does any commissioner, we're going to also, so the group knows that we're going to ask for comments from the public, and obviously no more than 3 minutes, but if you can keep them shorter. We're also going to, we may have questions for you, so don't leave.
All right.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Season. We'd ask that, I would like to see a show of hands. Certainly we don't want you to repeat the same thing over and over again, but I think your presence here repeats what you all wish to express, and we appreciate you being here. I would ask, though, that we have a show of hands for two things. Those that might speak with questions about this, and those that speak in support of this. And so it will be decided by the voters if we choose to put it on the ballot, but I would ask you now, if you wish to speak in support of this, if you would raise your hand. It doesn't mean you have to come up, but if you'd speak in support of this, would you raise your hand? All those, really all those supporting. Okay, those who have an undying quench to get up and speak, how many of those? How many are here? How many of you wish to speak? Okay, and are there any that have questions, significant questions or concerns that would like to speak about this now? Certainly, and then I would like to do this. I would like to ask somebody that has a question about it to come up, and we'll see if either we or the group might be able to answer that. So as you're listening to these questions, you may formulate an answer. And I think that's important that you all participate. So first I would ask, sir, if you'd like to make your way up to the front. Mr. Feingold, welcome.
Glad to be here. My name is Alan Feingold. I live at 2601 North Grand Street. You probably are familiar with the term opportunity cost in economics. If you spend $30 million on that, there's $30 million you will not be able to spend to improve school athletic fields. $30 million, a part of it, you will not be able to spend to improve the Maverick Club. $30 million, a part of it, you will not be able to do any new projects on pocket parks. $30 million you will not be able to spend to clear out areas of debris like the Amarillo Ice House, which could be converted to a park where people could sit. $30 million for all kinds of projects which have been proposed, which you are rejecting, including an aquatic center in the center of the city, not 7 miles away from the center of the city. I've also told you about locations for soccer fields, which are in the center of the areas where people most play soccer, and you will not be able to do that either. I'm sorry, I only have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Feingold. I would like to say that one of the things we considered as we considered this whole project was the relief it will give to our present parks where adult fields are now mixed with youth fields. We do allow alcoholic beverages, adult beverages at the adult park areas, and it's very hard to segregate that, so we think, and it doesn't address every one of your questions, but we think it will alleviate some pressure on parks both at Southwest, Southeast, and at Martin Road, that will eventually, those parks will begin to come back because they're being way overused right now. And so we also recognize that we don't really control the school facilities, but the school facilities oftentimes contract with the city to use facilities, and we're woefully inadequate to provide the facilities that they need. We now see a private courts outside the city of Amarillo that is closing because of financial concerns, I suppose, but they will be gone, and that will put a tremendous pressure from City League that was renting that space, and from other groups that are represented here, club groups and other private groups that were renting that space. We have no way to fulfill that, these 8 courts that would be indoors that would help do that. We've learned an awful lot from the citizens that would listen to pleas about this. And they began, I'm going to go on here for a minute, Alan, but when Jim and I came on the commission in 04-05, we had constant concerns by different groups. It wasn't just the aquatics, they were very organized, but we had baseball groups. And then when I came back on the commission, we heard from Bob Medina's group, we heard from other groups, we heard from other baseball groups, we heard from volleyball groups, we heard from people, and we were unable to address these because we just could not get enough in the capital funds to make a dramatic effect on these, just trying to maintain the fields. The reason that the Y has approached this, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me if I am, but it becomes very, very difficult for they as a private organization to maintain the fields that are used when they're overused, and that becomes an easier burden on the city when we spread this usage. We are not abandoning any of the places in the outlying areas, Alan. We can't address possibly with this new ones, but we're not abandoning Southeast Park. We're not abandoning Martin Road Park. In fact, we've had enhancements to those things and enhancements in our parks plan from our comprehensive plan to all the parks areas. It's just that we can't get across that capital expenditure initially. And I will tell you that I'm part of the problem if you talk about the solution, because as these groups came, Mr. City Manager, Brian Eads, Dr. Eads, and myself would all hear these and talk about it, and other commissioners in session when it came up. We couldn't figure out a solution. And finally, we saw an ability to get a group, all these separate groups together, united under one banner to work together. And they have formed their own leadership team to push these ideas forward. And I think it gets us off the dime of promising that someday. Now I know that there's people that have said, won't that interfere with downtown? Listen, downtown is doing fine. And we're proceeding with downtown. But we can't ignore the wishes of 40,000 children that are growing up today over the whole entire city to project what might happen. Downtown is for the whole city, and the whole city's for downtown. I don't see them as separate issues. I think that the citizens here are smart enough to know what to support. And when we sat these groups down and said, will you work together? And they said, yes. We also said what? We said, will you support the efforts to advance the city in downtown and other places? And every one of you raised your right hand and unofficially swore that you would support those efforts. The question is, will you get out and really do the work? Will you get the voters out for this? Because it is going to be the voters that decide what happens with these, not us. If we put it out there, it's going to be the voters. So Alan, I understand your questions, and I understand some frustrations, but I also think that we are dealing with these as comprehensively as we've ever been able to deal with them, as we listen to what these folks say is an absolute need in our city.
Will you give me 3 more minutes?
You darn right.
The difficulty previously has always been financial constraints. We didn't have the money. If you set out a parks program for $30 million that was comprehensive, I would back this. despite the fact that a great many people simply don't want the city to spend any more money. But your program is putting everything at the edge of the city, and it's putting it in one place. This needs to be distributed. There are many places which could be used to greater advantage than this. If you have a need, say, for new groceries and lots of them, you don't put it all in one great supermarket on the edge of town. If you want athletic facilities, you can much better distribute them, and you can also do a better job of having the kids participate. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't go to the facility that was halfway across town. I went to a park that was 3/4 from my house, 3/4 of a mile from my house, and every kid who was interested in athletics did the same. Proximity is key here. It's also key for adults. The single best exercise for adults over 40 years of age is walking, and you can have walk paths throughout most of the city, not on the fringe of it, but right in the city, which you do not have now. Again, time is limited, but I gladly draw up all the alternatives for you necessary if you will give me the opportunity to do so at length. Let's say 10 minutes for the sake of argument, and I will tell you every location you should be using. Moreover, if you think that the primary concern here is the city already owns this land, so why don't we use it? You don't necessarily use land that is peripheral to the entire city. If you have to, you could even sell some of that land, take the money, and use it to create parks inside the city, especially where you have the highest population density.
Alan, we will not abandon any parks or any current devices that are out there. And that argument you gave last was probably the argument when they created John Stiff Park way beyond the edge of the city. And so we'll see, and we have seen, Tradewind, City View, all this development in southeast Amarillo. We know TxDOT is now committed to a divided highway in the southeast part of the loop. I predict that the area from Grand, from Eastern, back to Ross is going to see development beyond, and this will help spur that development. I want to see development happen in somewhere other than southwest Amarillo and continue, and that's begun, and I think this addresses that. This is not a pocket park. This is not a neighborhood park. This is a regional park that can host tournaments. What swayed me on these things, that I have the same concerns you do, what swayed me is when these folks talked about there is nowhere in the state of Texas that can supply these facilities for tournaments today. And with this, we will attract other people, and we will not ignore our neighborhoods. As we have it, as we've added 9 splash pads, none in southwest Amarillo, but 9 splash pads, Hamlet Park's being redone. None of those plans are being abandoned. This is above and beyond, and this is through this citizens group that this is being brought forward. And so I would defend that for them. If they wish to defend it too, I would be pleased to hear from them. Thank you, Alan.
More later, if you're willing.
We will be back. Anyone else who would like to comment? Mr. Johnson, please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello to all the commissioners. I've spoken to you on the phone. I gave you my opinion. Now it's time to give it for the public also.
Would you mind giving your name and address?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've been here. Forgot. Edmund Johnston, 2116 South Hayden Street, Amarillo, Texas, of course.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I actually am not totally against this park, but I do have a few questions for these two gentlemen. Okay? To go ahead?
If you would address us, and we'll pass them on, just to keep the decorum in the room. Thank you.
Okay, pass on to you. First, I meant to say that I am a swimmer myself. I swim 3 times a week at Gold's Gym. And when I was young and all that, I played tennis and baseball and all that good stuff. Not against sports. One of the questions I have is, in this presentation, which was...
Please, Mr. Johnson, if you would address us, we'll all get you on the mic too. It kind of helps.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, they're listening.
You can see I'm not a politician.
That's okay.
Forget about this microphone.
No, Edmund, you've been here dozens of times. We've got the record, Edmund.
Oh, I know. You got the tapes too. Okay. I didn't hear anything mentioned about the $6 million that I've been reading about in donations.
Good question. They're still working toward that, and I heard reports today that they're well along the way. Very impressed with what they've done in a tremendously short period of time.
So if they don't raise the $6 million, what are you going to do?
Well, that's not something we'd have to address at this point. I know personally that I feel that they will, but I think at this point, what we're asking the voters to do, if we go by what they said, we're asking them to vote on whether we spend $30.9 million. This group has said they'd raise about $6 million. And so then it would be up to a decision to go forward or not. I still believe they'll meet their challenge.
Okay. Don't forget about Amarillo Globe News Center. We heard the same spiel there.
And not a penny of citizens' tax dollars was spent to complete that. Not one red cent. It was all hotel, motel tax funds, which came from people that came from out of town to stay in our beds, which we were going to increase with this. And so maybe that's a good opportunity. If they don't quite make it, maybe we could do it the same way. I don't know right now.
Okay. I'm glad you brought up the hotel, motel tax, because I wouldn't be against it because a lot of these tournaments, from the little bit I understand, bringing in, as you mentioned, money goes to the hotel, motel tax. They're going to benefit.
And they're going to eat.
Right.
And they're going to sleep.
Well, I hope so. But anyway, you're getting me off my train of thought.
Hey, Edmund, how about if I give you another minute?
No.
Edmund and I have this dialogue a lot, so we kind of get off track.
Give me a beer instead.
I don't have that up here.
Oh,
maybe afterwards.
Yeah, I'll find the bar. Not really. Okay, back to serious business. The hotel motel's going to benefit from this, as well as the people of Amarillo. I'm not totally against it. I didn't hear, another question, I didn't hear anything about the ongoing cost for maintenance. The city is going to have to pay for the maintenance. That is not going to be cheap. I did not hear anything about water usage. And I just read, as you people I've talked to individually know, about Lubbock. 5 cities were mentioned nationwide, and Lubbock is one of those that could possibly run out of water.
Please don't compare, I'm going to interrupt you for this one.
Okay.
Please don't compare us to Lubbock with water or anything else. They have $250,000 more in debt than we do. They have a 17-cent higher tax rate presently. They charge 10 times what we do for the utility drainage. Their sales tax revenue is nowhere near what ours is competitively. They have less hotel rooms. We believe we'll benefit economically from this, not just with hotel motel tax, but also with sales tax. And we will keep those thousands of people that have come and pled with me to stop taking their car on the road every weekend to meetings. So
yeah, you're absolutely right about Lubbock. One of the worst city governments, in my opinion.
And aren't we one of the best ones?
I don't know.
What about Standard & Poor's and Moody, what they say for AAA? Would you agree with them?
I don't even know who they are.
That's those Yankees in New York.
Oh, well, that's where I'm from, but I don't know about them. And water is very precious. And I hear we got water supplies for another 20 years.
No, you know how much we have? Do you know what a football field is? It's about an acre. So if we had an acre-foot deep, a foot deep of water, that'd be 385,000 gallons. And so if we had that times 5,280, that'd be a mile deep. So take 5,280 times 385,000 gallons, and then multiply that times 88 miles deep. So if you laid our water out like a football field, it stretched from here to Shamrock. It's more than 20 years, Edmund. It's 200 plus years.
Okay.
But we can't waste it.
No, okay, that's right. The city says, and of course I agree, every drop counts. And it's very precious. Your math is amazing.
It's from 3rd grade.
You use a calculator. Instead of swimming pools, they require a lot of maintenance, no doubt about that. And they use a lot of water, as we just discussed. I would prefer splash pads. Now, that's going to go over like a dead balloon.
They're going well. We've added 9. We're planning on more. Don't say that.
Yeah,
They're great.
I mean against swimming pools.
Well, you recycle the water some. You don't fill those zero pools like we do every day at Glenwood or at Glenwood Park. We're doing all those things. We're not giving up on any of that.
What? And then I didn't hear anything about the baseball fields. Are they going to use artificial turf, or does it pay to use artificial turf?
It's about a wash because the maintenance savings about equal to replacement costs, and yet it is being studied. Initial cost is a little more, but overall the usage is so much higher. They've taught me all this in the last 7 months. They've been to visit many times. They said that actually the usage is about 12 months a year, where otherwise you cut out 4 or 5 months. Then, if it does rain, you can get back on the fields almost instantly where you can't otherwise. So we've been trying to pay attention to what they've been teaching us.
Okay, they ought to be teaching me, but you're doing it. You're doing a good job.
We know you're paying attention.
Oh, okay. Let's see, I don't have much else to say, and I'm finished.
Your extra minute's over, so go ahead.
Well, you keep interrupting me.
I'm selling it.
I'm proud of the city, very proud of the city, that it is going to go to the voters. That's the main source of it. And all these organizations, I better not look over there, you'll scold me again. All these organizations, if they do their homework, it probably would pay. I think it's going to fail, and if you would come up with hotel motel tax to pay for it, I would vote for it.
Wait a second, I got one other point.
Okay.
Are you 65?
Pardon me?
Are you 65?
I'm 71.
Do you mind if it doesn't raise your taxes at all? Or do you want to contribute because you believe in it so much you do it even though you're over 65? This isn't going to change your taxes.
I know that, but
okay.
I can still be concerned.
I understand that, and I'm glad you are.
Yeah.
I'm glad you are.
And I spoke to all of you about my age, and it's not going to affect me. But it's going to affect taxpayers. But I am very pleased what I did hear from these gentlemen, that I was surprised, if I heard right or remember right, is it only going to raise the average taxpayers by, what, $25
a year? $100,000 home.
Yeah. That was one of my questions, and they answered it. I was surprised to hear that.
It's pretty inexpensive, isn't it?
Yeah, and I usually don't say that if you know me well.
And I know that. I made a study of that.
Oh,
you taught me how to be frugal.
Oh, yeah, I wrote the book.
I know you did.
Okay, you guys, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Edmund. We appreciate it. I enjoyed advancing with you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Cameron Monroe, I'll sort of introduce him, he gave his address, but he's the head of the Parks and Recreation Commission right now. Cameron.
7709 Farrell. And I do want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, first of all, for the privilege of serving our city on the Park and Recreation Commission. This is my second term and my second year to serve as chairman of the commission. We had Mr. Ware and Mr. Kavanagh speak to us today, and my main message is to tell you that our commission voted 100% unanimously to support the ARC. There's numerous places around Amarillo where you can see private and public partnerships, and they've been very, very successful. One of the ones that comes to mind off the top of my head right now is our zoo. Had a wonderful partnership out there. We've seen that zoo grow, new programs, new buildings. I dare say it would have probably never happened had it not been for private people with their funds. Every one of these groups has come to our Parks Commission over the last few years. I was remiss. Somebody asked me, said, have they come to the Parks Commission yet? I said, no. Well, I was wrong, because over the years, every one of these groups has come to our Parks Commission and asked us to help them with the programs mentioned here today. And as much as we would like to help each one, we've been unable to do that just from a funding standpoint. We would be remiss, I think, as elected officials and appointed officials, to not take an opportunity from someone saying, we want to help you to the tune of $6 million plus, fund these programs, benefit your city, and move on down the road with some wonderful, wonderful facilities that may or may not come to fruition in years in the future. So we're here to endorse this. We're here to ask you to consider the bond election coming up, let the citizens vote on this. But we think the benefits will be tremendous for the city of Amarillo. I thank the group that's come forward and brought this group to a nucleus. It's a wonderful undertaking, so we do endorse this and look forward to the future for our city.
Mr. Monroe, when you had to tell them no, I want you to know they came straight to us afterwards.
We told them to. We said, go see the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm Brian Eads. We've been working on this for a long time, and I specifically want to point out Panhandle Aquatics. They have been tenacious in pursuing this on behalf of the kids of this city. And people like Vicki Bryan and Greg Bryan have really worked on this now for the 7 years that I've been here. And I think they've been the nucleus of that. And ultimately, their hard, long work has paid off. But I also don't think we can be remiss. This is very complex. What do I know of baseball and how you schedule baseball and volleyball and tournaments? And so I want to thank our city Parks and Rec, and specifically recognize Rod Tweed. The city has been intimately involved in trying to help you coordinate the desires of the people. This is not something I do not believe that we as commissioners are pushing or not pushing. This is an opportunity for the people of Amarillo to have their say. This is an opportunity for us to give you the chance to fulfill your dreams on behalf of the kids of this community, and you got to sell this. And you've got a good team together, and I look forward to it, and you seem like you've got a great head start on it. So I'd like to say congratulations.
Well, and I would like to say that Dr. Eads has been very important to this process. He's watched this. He's asked the commission to look at this closely each time it's come up from different groups. And I think it would be important. Rod, would you stand for a minute? Let's just recognize. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in regard to this commission? Certainly, ma'am, please come up.
My name is Elizabeth Hayes. I live at 1301 Alta Vista.
Thank you.
I am all for supporting the art program. I think the idea is fantastic. I've thought so since I was a teenager here in Amarillo. My question is the locale where it's going to be. All three of my kids were competitive swimmers. All three of them had college scholarships in swimming. But I think I would have been very nervous each and every morning that my daughter got up at 5:30 to drive clear to the other side of town to swim, or for the afternoon practices. I don't know how much you know about swim teams, but they have practice before school and after school. They are involved all day long. You don't really have to worry about them getting into trouble because they don't have time. But then they have the practice after school. They came home after school, after dark, every night during the winter. And I just would have been a very nervous mother if I'd have known my kids were having to go clear across town, and I do live in Northwest, to go to swim practice.
Ma'am, I agree that that is always a concern. I will tell you that we know from studies that activity breeds security. And so as we see more activity in the area, we know it's more secure. It also gets patrolled more by the police because there's simply more people coming to that area. We also would hear that very valuable argument from anybody that lives in any other part of town other than Southeast. And yet, as we came across this, we looked at where we could provide another regional park that would adequately grow. We showed a picture. Can you put that picture back up of the park? There's actually plans. We own, Mr. City Manager, isn't it about 580 acres totally out there?
Yes, Mayor, that's pretty close.
And we are developing about 120 with this.
I believe this represents an additional 110 acres of developed space.
So what happens is all this green area, we have actually drawings of what could happen there in the future. And we hope it won't be 45 more years.
My other question is in reference to the model you have down in the lobby of the aquatic center.
Now, I don't believe there's one of the baseball facility, the hotel, and the parking garage. But I don't think there's one of there.
That model was built, is built on the concept drawings that were done back in about 2010, early 2011. So it does show a potential aquatic center and a court facility.
Will this take its place?
Yes. Yes. This is, we have looked at being able to expand this. We've looked at getting it all in an area where we can service it more efficiently. We've looked at the ability to have tournaments. It does not, as Mr. Feingold was concerned, it does not replace any of our neighborhood parks. It doesn't replace any of our other park facilities. It doesn't diminish those. That's why we can support this discussion. And that discussion is, will the voters vote to build a regional complex that will host tournaments from around the state and around in other states? We've heard of people going on a weekend 400 to 500 miles in some cases to be at tournaments, 250 commonly, and they leave every darn weekend. I never knew this culture existed. I really didn't. I'm sorry. It's unbelievable. For swimming, for baseball, for football, for soccer, for volleyball. It's just unbelievable the number of people that are leaving our city and spending their tax dollars, spending their money, sales tax dollars are going to other cities. And yet we could encourage those to come here. It's not the only reason to do this, but it's certainly part of the reasons. When you add it all up, it makes good sense to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else who would like to comment? Sir, please.
My name is Thomas Mutt Schumann. I actually came here today for another reason. I didn't come here for against the Amarillo Recreational Complex.
Do you mind putting that up just a little, sir?
Is that better?
That's great.
Did you catch my name and address?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't come here either for or against the Amarillo Recreational Complex, but I did have a couple of, just as I'm listening to the conversations. The first gentleman that came up was concerned about, spending money across Amarillo instead of one central area. I got an example, just as a citizen today, I'm playing volleyball in the YMCA Corporate Cup, and I think we're playing it over 2 or 3 courts here in Amarillo. My game tonight is at 10 o'clock. My guess is that we just don't have enough courts to play enough games to get them done earlier, but so, there's an example where we did have something where we were all in one place, we could play more games, be more efficient. We wouldn't be out till 10 o'clock playing volleyball on a work night. The other gentleman that came up had a concern about water in Lubbock. My son is a senior at Amarillo High. He's on the swim team. He started playing. He's always been a basketball player. He made the freshman team at Amarillo High, didn't make the JV his sophomore year, went out for swimming as a junior. That was last year. Made it to regionals in one district, went to regionals. And so I got to be very acquainted with the competitive swimming. I think it's a phenomenal sport. I didn't grow up around it. The kids that are in it are phenomenal kids. It does allow more participation. As you get more sports, it allows kids that maybe didn't make the basketball team or didn't make the football team to participate in other sports. And so I'm very, very happy that my son is in swim. And I know Lubbock might have a water problem, but I've been to Lubbock's Aquatic Center. It's amazing. It is one amazing aquatic center. And the other issue that the nice lady brought up was about driving. Somebody's going to have to drive. Wherever you put this facility, somebody's going to have to drive. I would love it if it was right down where I live, but that's not going to be the case. But so, I just don't think there's any way to please everybody, but I do support this, and I'm glad I showed up today.
Would you give your address? We did miss that.
7308 Park Ridge Drive.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. We encourage anyone else who would like to make a comment. And we know some of you, please come forward. We know some of you are here in support of, most of you are here in support of this, so we appreciate you being here.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Clay Wallace, 9102 Clint Avenue. Just a little history. We moved here 2 years ago from Hereford. Facilities weren't there in Hereford. We own a business in Hereford. Business grew, we moved to Amarillo. We serve this area here with what we do as a living, a family business. Cabinets is there, support that community tremendously. But there was no place that did not look like the community was growing towards the children. We moved to Amarillo, and I don't think this would happen in Amarillo, but I believe if we don't invest in our children, the children are going to go somewhere else. They're going to find a place to play volleyball. They're going to find a place to play softball. They're going to find a place to do this. And so I am in full support of this. I'm pleased with the group that started it, Mr. Cavanis here, his sons, and Mr. Wares, all the other groups, High Plains. Just for example, this past year I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old. One's playing baseball, one's playing softball. We went to a tournament at Rick Klein. My wife stayed out there most of the day. I was clear over at Thompson Park. Vice versa, during the day, I don't know how many miles we put on the car. It was good for the local gas market here. But I'm just in total support of it. And I think addressing the locale, sure, I would love for you to get Southwest Amarillo. But
I found an interesting story about locale. I was trying to see a facility, and it's in Raton. We're the largest city in Texas that does not have an indoor facility, yet Raton, New Mexico has a facility as large or larger than what this proposed facility is. And they're planning some more expansion of sports facilities in that town. And I said, how in the world are you doing this? I went and saw it. I couldn't believe it. And they said, well, we're getting people from Trinidad and Cuesta and from Springer and from all over the place. They're driving 100 miles, sometimes a day, to come 3 times a week just to use the therapy pool. So, you know, I think for people that have the need, we need to have what they need to take care of that.
well, I guess my main concern was coming up here, living in another community that did not have it. There is future plans for Hereford to have a facility somewhat like this, not near as big or anything, but just coming from another community that does not have it. These children, these parents are willing to spend the money to take them to these locations. Why can't it be right here in Amarillo? So that's my main concern.
Voters will decide that. Go work on the voters.
All right.
We hope. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Any commissioners who would like to comment, please?
Of course, I've been sitting here for 9 years, and each of these groups have hit on us numerous times, and over the phone and in the grocery store or wherever. And this coming together is so meaningful to me because this will make it work. It would be hard to justify the expenditure on an individual basis, in other words, just for the aquatic center, or just for Kids Inc. and their basketball and volleyball program, or just for girls fast pitch, or just for hardball. But yet you put all these together and you've got some magic there. You've got a reason for this to happen. And I think that here again it would have been difficult to pass individual bond issues or to justify expenditures out of our capital budget. Doing it this way, the voters will have a shot at it, and these parents and these supporters will have a chance to rally support. And Edmund, in opposition, I predict that this will pass overwhelmingly, and I think it will for all the right reasons. I commend all these groups.
Please, Commissioner.
I'm very, very pleased to have you all here, and I was just looking out in the crowd, and I see a lot of familiar faces. But what I'm particularly impressed with is the age of the people that are trying to do this, you know, the young people that are getting involved and making sure that they have a thriving community when they get to be our age here. And then I want to thank all the young people that are here to support their parents for their particular sport. dealing with issues that come up in your community. And so I thank all of you. I know there are a lot of people here who have worked very hard on this, and I think it's really great. And about the distance thing, I live in southeast Amarillo, right off of 34th Street. If anybody has a problem getting on the freeway, you can go across Amarillo from that point all the way to the mall on 34th Street. And as all my children live out of town, I'm ashamed to say because they never came back to Amarillo, when they say, Mom, let's go to Joanne's Fabrics, and I say, oh, it's so far away, I don't feel like driving. And I say, Mom, it's only 15 minutes. And I think, yeah, that's true, because they live in large cities and they travel a lot longer. So the quality of life in Amarillo is still great. We don't have to drive more than 15, 20 minutes to get anywhere. So I don't think that location should be a concern to anyone. And my part of town is fairly safe considering everything. So I think that that needs to be noted. And I want to thank Terry Cavanis and William Ware for spearheading this effort and for putting the group together to work together. And I hope this comes to fruition. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, you know, I've been on the commission for 2.5 years, and I've heard from most all the people here, most of the groups, and worked with the aquatic people even before I was on the commission. And so the quandary for us was, who do you pick? You know, do you pick the fast pitch girls over the volleyball people, over the aquatics people? And so I cannot be more encouraged that people with diverse interests have come together for a common goal. I think as a community we are stronger together than we are fighting for our own separate piece of the pie. And so this is great for me to look out and see. Everybody here, there's been some talk about why wasn't there a blue ribbon panel on this. Well, I'm seeing a blue ribbon panel in front of me. I would like to ask William Ware or Ms. Cavanis a quick question, and it was a good question that I think Edmund brought up. The $6 million, is that on top of the 30.9? So is the total bill 37 million or something? And then also, do you have a date, a goal for when you're going to raise that?
Yes, Commissioner Green, the time frame for our fundraising is we hope to get our goal reached by November. We want to raise at least $6 million, and any more than that we will take. And I believe we can apply that to the capital project if we do make more. And the total project will be approximately $37 million. That's where the math comes from.
But there is not a requirement for that with what we're doing. If we support what they're asking for on the ballot, there is some leeway in that. Although we think to raise the funds, we need to keep the time frame tight. That's what they proposed to us, keep the time frame tight. They have professional help doing this too.
And the bonds are 20 years, is that right?
Is that your city manager?
We would generally issue 20-year debt, correct?
Does anyone else like to make a comment? If not, excuse me, please.
I would just say anybody interested that may be in this room and participating, Amarillo Area Foundation is the professional organization that's helping put all this together and tie this together. And they're just doing an excellent job. And as you know, they represent the entire Panhandle and just a great partner here.
What's the best way to find that video if you want to look at it tonight, if you're listening on TV right now?
Supporttheart.com. There has been a previous video online, and I don't think that it had the individuals with speaking, but I think that it's uploaded now. Is that correct?
It will be after the meeting.
Shortly. It's on YouTube. Well, actually, I got it this morning, Wendy. I found it this morning on YouTube.
Well, you know what you do.
I did. I saw Betty Solis on the deal. I think that's the one. Betty was on there.
It has video and pledge information.
Okay. All right. Anything else? This is the best way for city government to work. I love it. I'd entertain a motion. No? Oh, we don't need a motion.
It's not scheduled for any action.
Excuse me. I'm just kind of excited jumping in. You guys got me all excited.
Mayor,
Okay.
would it be the way to the...
This kind of a project gets me excited, and I'm an old guy, so not easily excited. The quality of life that Amarillo needs. We've got a great city to live in, but this will even make it a greater city. So I commend you, I encourage you, I'm pulling for you, so stay after it.
I think you need to ask him for money afterwards.
I'm also broke, I'm old.
City manager?
Mayor, should I take from the positive comments here today that you would like to see this that actually would be on next week's agenda for possible consideration?
Yes, we'd like to see it on the agenda for consideration. Okay. So this takes one consideration on the agenda next week, and appreciate everyone being here. We encourage you in your efforts, but I tell you, you're just at the starting block. You got to get over the finish line, and that's going to be a lot of work with voters and answering very, very good questions. We heard a lot of answers over the last few weeks, and I think you're on the right track. So keep running. All those are puns, and they're meant to be. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on to our business, and you won't bother us a bit if you leave. We've held you here a long time. Thanks, Edmund. Don't you want to stay for the budget?
I started to good correct
If we could ask you to move out, we're going to move on with our business, so please, we'd ask you to have the conversations out in the hallway. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you all very much for being here. We are going to move on with our meeting, so we'll get clear as quickly as we can. Thank you. Commissioners, if we could, the city manager asked me to move, and I agree with this, to move to number 11, because there are some time frames for the publication of this item. Yeah. Item number, read that real quick. Hey, Wendy, could you shut the door when they get out? We won't be able to hear. Okay, item number 11, public hearing to discuss and consider proposed tax rate. This item is to discuss and consider the proposed tax rate for the maintenance and operation of debt service for the proposed 2013-2014 City of Amarillo fiscal budget. Do you have any comments from the commission regarding this? We might start with the city manager, excuse me.
Certainly, Mayor, thank you. This item 11 today, first formal step of many steps that will ultimately result in the adoption of your budget and associated tax rate. Per Texas law, the first item that this city commission must do and consider is to establish the maximum proposed tax rate that you would consider adopting for the upcoming year. So for this item today, we can discuss, be pleased to answer any questions you may have, but the end result will be the proposal of a tax rate that you would put in the paper. This will actually be published this Thursday. As we move forward through your budget process, this is a proposed tax rate. It is the rate that you can adopt anything up to and including this rate, but you cannot go over it. I do think it's important to note you are not setting the tax rate at this point. You are putting out, I think earlier someone called it the high water mark. So you're putting out that top number that you will consider as we move through the next about 5-6 weeks.
Okay.
So for clarification, we could go under, we can't go over.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we all understand that. We had quite a bit of discussion as we worked through the budget. We do have a participant here in the budget discussion that sat through the whole thing. I want to recognize her. Carolyn accepted the challenge that Commissioner Sims threw out to ask people to come for our budget discussions, which took place last week, Tuesday, all day long, Wednesday, all day long, and I mean all day. And then Thursday, we did it for about a little over a half a day. And of course, there's something wrong with us because we all enjoyed it, but the city staff prepared for this for months. And Carolyn came and listened as a citizen to how that process works. And we actually got some input from her at the end, and I appreciate your commitment to do that. It's not a simple process. We've learned that. We enjoy it because it is so complex and it is so intertwined with the city and how it's operated and the quality of life and the basic living conditions of the people that live in our city. So we thank you for being there. We had discussed possibility of up to, in our work sessions, a 2-cent increase. And I will open the discussion with that it's possible. Now, we don't have to do that. We discuss needs. 1 cent roughly covers 10 more policemen. That would put us at 1.81 per thousand, and the standard is 2. That, if we did add 10, that leaves us 33 policemen short of the national standard of 2 per thousand. And our growth rate of the city requires that we add about 3 every year. We have that in the budget. We cannot, in my view, can't find a way to fund an extra 10. We'll never get ahead of this without it. The other discussion that came up just to open this discussion was about other needs in the city. We know there's a huge need for IT, for computers. We have over 3,000 computers, and they need updating, they need renovation, or it gets much more costly down the road. We also feel there's a need to look at, from one of the commissioners, a discussion about employees and their compensation and the inability to do that at the present rate. So the discussion I would begin is whether we could agree to set this maximum rate, which we could draw back from, at 2 cents higher now than now. Mr. City Manager, what would that be?
Mayor, 2 cents over your present rate, that would be 34.009 cents total.
What would that be under similar cities? It's like 17 cents under a sister city, right?
Significantly.
Significantly. And we also are lower on water rates and lower on other rates than that same sister city. Lower on debt, but now we're $250 million lower in debt. So we invited people to come, and Carolyn might want to comment down the road here somewhere, but we've had very, very lengthy discussion about the budget and how we could trim it or deal with it. We're left with this decision. Any comments from the commissioners?
Mayor, I think that the items that you've proposed and that were under discussion have to do with human capital. We do need the police officers in order to protect the citizenry. It's a public safety issue. And then paying city employees a little higher rate just because they deserve it. They work hard, and we're a growing city. We'll have to add staff sometime in the future also to take care of those needs. And so we can't stay stagnant with the situation as it is right now. But certainly public safety is something that we are responsible for, and adding the additional 10 police officers, I think, is vital to our community.
And it was noted, as far as the employees, that we skipped them on a raise in 09, and in 10, we skipped the managers again. And so there was that discussion as we discussed where we stand with in comparison. There also is a chart that was given out about the future needs for IT, for our IT department and updating computers. That chart, to me, was significant. It showed a lack next year, not this fiscal year, but next one, of about $1.5 million projected needed to spend that we don't have in the budget right now for the next few years to update computers, keep them current, and avoid the tragedy of a computer breakdown or other things that can cause computers. I know in my business we didn't stay up to that, and we cost ourselves a lot extra to catch up when that happened. We had a catastrophic failure, and it affected many computers. We had to have a group come in and rebuild everything, and that, I can't even imagine. That was 36 computers. This is 100 times that. That's 3,600 computers, I think, that we have. So those needs we know are present, and I cannot find a way in the budget to deal with those at the present rate. So that's what my point is. Anyone else?
Setting this maximum with the idea that we can go up, we can go down, gives us, I think, the opportunity to talk for, I think, 4 different times about what we need to do, what we might do, and have public input on all that.
Correct. Commissioner?
Well, I find myself the odd man out because I think with additional capital revenue we have from the drainage utility, really pretty dramatic increase in sales tax revenue, and a 1 cent increase in the ad valorem tax rate potentially to support additional police officers, which we've worked for a long time. I think really ought to be able to meet our needs for now. And I think when we look at our employee benefit package, I really don't concur with what I'm hearing from the rest of the commissioners in this regard. So I won't probably go all the way with you guys that you did for those goals that you stated for today.
Well, that will be the discussion, obviously, for the next couple of meetings. But it's right now, today, basically, we're setting a rate that we can't go no higher than. And that's all set out by state law and the way we have to deal with this. Any other commissioners have a comment?
Well, here again, I'm expressing, as Dr. Reed said, his personal views, my personal views, and that is, there's very little question in my mind about the 10 extra officers that we're needing. Of course, 3 were already in the base budget that the staff brought forward to us, and this would be 10 on top of it, a total of 13 police officers. And I think as we watch and have observed just here recently the crime that we're experiencing, plus as we were visiting with our police chief and talking about crime and the crime rate, we're in a special situation here where the state is pushing prisoners out of the state prison system, and then the counties, of course, cannot accommodate that many prisoners, so there's being deals worked out. My point is that the convicted people are being put back out on our street for our police to address. And then the Attorney General of the United States comes out this week and is pushing for lessening the required sentencing on those with lesser or minor type drug offenses. So what I'm saying is all of this is pushing the responsibility for crime prevention at a local level. And we're trying to address that and stay with it. And I would be less than honest if I didn't say that's 1 cent of the increase. The other 1 cent of increase, to me, is we have continued time after time after time of seeing our employees do great jobs, whether it's the way that the city handled the 22 inches of snow or the water eruption that they had out north of town. That was a main line that burst and was shooting water 40 or 50 feet or whatever it was into the air. And we never lost pressure because of the way our crews jumped on it. Now, folks, if we lost pressure, that means we would have been under a boil instructing. So, I mean, time after time after time, we commend our employees and thank them for the job that they did or are doing. And I'm of the opinion we need to increase their pay. And we're talking about in the budget was 2.75% increase. This extra penny would allow us to go to 3.75% increase. And this is not all the way across the board. It will be up to the different department heads. This will be on a merit-related basis. If somebody has done a good job, they might get a 4% increase. Somebody hasn't done such a good job, they only might get 1% or 0.5% or none. What I'm saying is this is just, it's across the board for our employees. And I think they've earned it and deserve it. And I think we do. Remember, we have 1,800 employees. We're a major employer in the city. And we're having to compete with those other employers in the city. So,
Commissioner, any comment? Any other comments? Okay. Well, I will tell you, as we stand out in the street with constituents, whether it be in Pavlar, north of town, or in southwest Amarillo, where there's certain deals pertaining to drainage in the streets, and particularly streets that need to be rebuilt. We've addressed part of that. we come down by the newer areas, by Trade Winds and City View, and talk about the things that are needed there, and talk about just the expansion of parks and other things. In my mind, I have to justify that we're getting our bang for your buck, and I think we are, and I think that we're short in many ways of fulfilling the needs. The capital needs budget for the next 4 or 5 years, it's listed as the city shows us these things, is not adequate. It does not cover some things that are absolutely necessary. And we have no way to deal with those, and the farther we get behind, it's no different than the streets. The streets are a little more dramatic. If we ignore street repairs, it turns from $100,000 a mile to $1 million a mile to rebuild it. But there's other things like that, like computer repair. If we have a catastrophic failure of our computer system because we refuse to update them, yet next year in the budget, we know there's $1.6 million that we have no way to fund right now. And when we talk about the police have to be sustained. It has to be through a tax increase. It's not a one-time charge or a fee. It's a long-term commitment. I just think that we're running the city very, very frugally. I think our city manager and the department heads need to be commended on that. Our finance people get complimented. We have a very unusual situation in our city. We're one of 5 cities in the state of Texas that has a AAA bond rating in both general obligation bond and water and sewer. While some say we have too much debt, we really don't. They couldn't believe how little debt we have. We show about, when I went down and talked to them with the city people, we had $27 million in debt on our books, where sister cities of our size have $275 to $300 million. And they're processing from their taxes up to 17 cents of debt service. We're processing 2 cents of debt service. So if you took that out, their tax rate is not really just 17 cents higher than ours, it's double that. We're talking about a 32-cent tax rate where they're talking about a 51-cent tax rate. In some cities that we're compared to have a 71-cent tax rate, yet our water is cheaper. Lubbock, our sister city to the south, I know there's people that worry about the drainage utility. Their charge is 10 times what our charge is every month, 10 times. So I think we're being frugal, I think we're being careful, and I think we have to be responsible to take care of the needs. We cannot turn our back and think these things are going to go away. So I will end my discussion with that and just say that I would hope someone, what do we need to do on this? Do we need a resolution?
Mayor, it's on your agenda as a public hearing, so I encourage you to open the floor.
Thank you. So we would like to have comments about this and understand we are setting the top rate, we aren't setting the final rate. If there anyone would like to comment, please come forward.
Comment, but I didn't know if I need to afterwards.
You're welcome to comment at this point, Caroline. You sat through the whole process, I think you earned the right.
Yeah.
If you would like to give your name and address, please.
My name is Carolyn Thornton. I live at 1947 South Morris. The invitation was not from Jim Sims. What it was from the city commissioners and you that said, public, you're invited. Come in and see what we do. And I wasn't sure about the time, you said it, and so when I raised my hand and I asked about it, Jim Sims jumped on it and got me straight real quick on the time on where it was at. I didn't go as a critic. I said that before. I didn't go as a critic. I wanted to find out what you all do. I wanted to find out about the budget. It's real easy to say, we need this and I need that. It's very easy to say. But I tell you what, I was impressed. I was very impressed. And my eyes were tired too, and my brain was tired, because what I did was I listened to what you all go through every year. And you weren't kidding when you said it was a book this big. And then there was a half a book. And we're including the font size and the numbers and the explanations that were given for every single penny. It was amazing to me. I was impressed by the financial team that came forth, that it was the city commissioners and the mayors is on one side asking questions. I was impressed by that. You listened, but you also, you weren't shy. Of course, none of you are shy anyways. And then on the other side, but you're all sitting at the same table, Here's Jared and the team, the financial city team, that were right there, boom, 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 just going down line by line by line. And then to my surprise, the department leaders, the heads, came one after another on each department. It was very interesting, and I'm pleased. I did mention too that whenever I finally left, it was 2.5 days of it, I remember someone approached me about it, and they said, talked to me about the city meeting, the budget meeting, and the first thing I said was, you don't even know what you're talking about. You need to go. I'm not saying that I know everything about it, but I'm saying you weren't there, you don't know what you're talking about. I really will encourage people to go to these meetings as just ordinary citizens, and I applaud you and I thank you all for the work that you do for our city. Thank you.
Thank you for sitting through all that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's important. Are there any other comments about what we're discussing in regards to setting the tax rate? The top tax rate, not the final.
The only thing I would have to say is I appreciated whoever, which commissioner or the mayor that said to the big group here before, you know, to go out and get for the bond election and for the ARC, it's their job to go out and get that done because that's a citizen's decision, certainly if we're going to add certain, you know, facilities like that. But I think it's our job as the city commission and the mayor to take care of the basic needs of the city, which includes, you know, health and public safety and infrastructure. And I think that's what we're doing here with the Texas.
Well, we don't have to agree. We have to debate. The importance of learning to that debate is critical to all of us. Anyone else that would like to comment, please? Okay, at this point, so I do this correctly, Mr. City Attorney, do we disclose the hearing? Do we have to state that we want to set that at 2 cents without any dissension from the commission, or we settle that?
We close the hearing and ask for a motion.
Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing at this time and we'll ask for a motion regarding the maximum rate. And that is item number 11.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I make a motion?
Certainly.
Okay. I move that we set a maximum proposed property tax rate of 0.34009 cents per $100 valuation.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by the audience or by the commission? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That passes with a 4-1 vote. Okay, let's see where we are in this agenda. We have number 2. Seems like we've been farther than number 2. Here we go. Ordinance number 7425 is the first reading of an ordinance ordering a special city election for Tuesday, November 5th, 2013, for the purpose of voting on proposed amendments to the city charter. The ordinance states 22 amendments as ballot propositions. For each proposition, there is an explanatory material and prescribed ballot text. State law requires the ballot text to be succinct, so the ordinance prescribed ballot text for each position and broader background information for each. The ordinance contains standard clauses for the administration of the election jointly with Potter and Randall counties and contracting for their services in conducting the city's portion of the election. Since 1913, the charter has been amended only 7 times since 1913. This is the first time a broader update of the charter has ever been proposed. Numerous states and federal laws have been enacted or changed since 1913, and many of the propositions are housekeeping to bring the charter into compliance with current law. Those items, I would like to turn over to, I think, our city attorney to go through those ordinance items. I don't think the count from what we previously discussed is 22 anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Would you take us through those items?
I'll be glad to, Mayor. Chris, pick up the first slide, please. To go through the list of the proposed charter amendments, of course, there's more detailed information available for each one, which we previewed with you last week in your work session and again today in your work session. The first proposed amendment would be an update of general terminology, titles, numbers, etc. charter written in 1913 refers to titles that we no longer use. For one example, personnel department is now human resources department. One of the significant updates that would be included in this amendment would be to update the name of this body from city commission to city council, which is the more common terminology among city governments in Texas today. These are not intended to be any substantive changes. These would just be a matter of vocabulary terminology and not affect any substantive right, duty, or procedure. The second amendment that we proposed, there are some provisions that had to do with the period of 1913 to 1915 when Amarillo first became a home rule city. And these were transition clauses that transition city government into being a home rule city. Those clauses are still in our charter. They've had no effect, no meaning, no use since 1915. If we're going to amend the charter, we would appreciate a little house cleaning and remove those useless clauses. The third proposition would remove some statutory sites. Again, in 1913, they tried to be very precise when they wrote, and so they mentioned certain state laws by chapter and verse. Unfortunately, in the last 100 years, those chapters and verses have either been repealed and or moved into other chapters and verses. The legal sites no longer have any meaning, so we would remove those and just replace them with a general statement referring to applicable state law. That phrase would be used instead of a chapter and verse reference. The fourth proposition would bring annexations into line with current state law. In 1913, there was little Texas law on that subject, and so the charter has very substantive provisions with timelines and notices and procedures. As the years have gone by and Texas law has become much more prescriptive and detailed, it's now difficult to honor both sets of rules and annexation. In fact, the state law now provides greater notices and greater protections for property owners than does your charter. And we would propose to remove this, to in the charter indicate that annexations will be done in accordance with state law and repeal the local provisions. The fifth proposition would be to insert a specific reference to the Open Meetings Act. I assure you this will not be by chapter and verse. It will be simply by a reference to the fact that we acknowledge the Texas Open Meetings Act. Your charter already acknowledges an open meetings doctrine, but this would tie it to current law. The sixth proposition, in 1913, it only took one city judge to handle the dockets. We now have several judges who have been appointed by ordinance power by the Home Rule Authority. We would like to kind of clean up that source of authority by amending the charter to acknowledge that the City Commission may appoint any number of city judges. We currently have one full-time and 3 part-time judges. The seventh proposition, again with municipal court, in 1913, the maximum fine that could be levied in municipal court was $200. Today, by state law, that amount is $2,000. This would be another administrative cleanup where we would simply remove the $200 reference and say that the maximum fine shall be as allowed by state law. The eighth proposition would remove a limitation on the city manager. Under the current charter, in an emergency, he may spend no more than $250 as an emergency expenditure. On any given day, he's authorized to expend up to $50,000 under normal circumstances. And so, once again, 1913 compared to 2013, the economy has changed, and this proposition would remove the reference to $250 and allow him to act in emergencies just as he does in routine times. The ninth proposition, the charter requires the city manager and certain other city officials to post fidelity bonds of $5,000. That has not kept up with current spending authority and the economy. This would amend the charter to state that the amount of fidelity bonds would be set by ordinance. That way, city council, city commissions in the future can more easily amend that amount to keep up with the current economy. The 10th proposal would address a quirk in the charter It states right now that a quorum of the city commission consists of a majority of the elected members of the commission. Well, if you read that carefully and think about it, it says the elected members of the commission, and yet the charter acknowledges that there is a situation in which there could be an appointed member, such as for a vacancy, and you would appoint someone to an unexpired term of office in accordance with the charter, but that appointee would not be counted as part of your quorum. This amendment would clean up that technicality by simply stating that a quorum shall be a majority of all members and take away the qualifier of whether you're elected or not. The 11th proposition turns again to a housekeeping matter. Your charter is very prescriptive about election dates and times and time periods and so many days for this and so many days for that activity related to elections. And yet today, the Texas Election Code preempts all of those charter provisions. When you begin to read your city charter to understand elections, you will be led astray. You will not understand the election law if all you read is the charter, because today it is mandated by the Texas Election Code. So all of those provisions in the charter that specify specific election dates and times would be repealed, and in its place would simply state the phrase, in accordance with state law. The 12th proposition concerns the date of your regular city election. Under the current charter, the city election shall occur on April the 1st in odd-numbered years. Well, if you've lived in Amarillo for very many years, you know that we don't do city elections in April, we do them in May. Why? Because state law says cities may have elections in May. They no longer allow cities to have elections in April. And so this would clean that up. We never can predict what the legislature's going to do. They do change those election dates from time to time. So this proposition would say that your city election shall be on the authorized date on May 1 or the nearest date to May 1 as allowed by state law. And it retains the odd-numbered year scheme that you've had for a century. Proposition 13. Amarillo has not yet encountered this problem. Some other Texas cities have. This would be a new provision, a completely new provision that addresses the problem of what do you do if you have different groups circulating petitions. They put forward a charter amendment. The city commission perhaps puts forward a charter amendment. One says black, one says white, and they each get a majority favorable vote. Now, which one becomes law? This charter amendment would break that tie, would resolve that situation by saying whichever proposition received the most favorable votes, it would become law. 14 is the same type of problem, except instead of being charter amendments, it concerns just initiative and referendum measures. Same thing, if you have conflicting measures, whether by referendum or initiative, which one would prevail if they could not be reconciled? It would be the one with the highest number of affirmative votes. Proposition 15, this would be a new qualification on an old rule. We currently allow initiative and referendum petitions. Currently, the charter is silent. It has no time limit for how long one of those petitions may be out in the community after it is registered with the city secretary. Now, it is true that state law says that a signature expires after 180 days. That's different than saying the petition expires. You simply begin losing signatures after 180 days under state law. Proposition 15 would set a 90-day limit to register the petition, circulate it, and return it. The rationale for that is initiative and referendum are intended to be extraordinary remedies in the law, used only when there is broad, significant public concern and not simply a vocal minority who disagrees. And so if there is broad, significant public concern on the issue, it is feasible that it would be easy to generate signatures within 90 days. People will be lining up to sign it. And if they're not, then maybe it doesn't meet extraordinary circumstances for which initiative and referendum were intended. Proposition 16, in a similar vein, addresses initiative and referendum petitions. These measures, under the current charter, you have to read very carefully and recognize that the city secretary does have a reasonable time period in which to validate signatures. This would put some parameters on that process, and what is proposed is 21 calendar days for the signature validation process to occur. That holds the city secretary accountable. It also assures due process for the committees, the people who circulate those petitions, that their petition will not be held up too long for the validation process. Proposition 17, this also addresses initiatives and referendums, whether put forward by petition or by this governing body. And it would say that once a topic has gone to the ballot box, you would have to wait 3 years before it could again become the topic of an initiative or a referendum. If the voters have voted on it, then let it lie for 36 months and let people live with their decision and then see how it looks. Proposition 18, the charter currently says it requires that this body meet weekly. And that's all it says. It does not allow for any emergency exception for an exigency, whether that's Christmas occurring on Tuesday, or whether that's 19 inches of snow on Monday night and you can't get to City Hall on Tuesday. This proposition would simply allow for the fact that a weekly city commission meeting may be canceled for exigent circumstances and still require at least 2 meetings a month. Proposition 19, this would be a new and substantive change to the charter. Under the current charter, under current state law, any person who meets the state requirements and the charter residency requirements may register to run for election as mayor or city commissioner. This would require a filing fee of $100 in order to be a candidate for mayor or city commissioner. Or, so that we don't have an undue impact on persons financially, they may, in lieu of paying the $100 fee, submit a signature of 100 signatures, a petition of 100 signatures in support of their candidacy. Yes, Commissioner, it would have to be 100 signatures of registered voters residing within the city of Amarillo, because this is a city election. Proposition 20, in the current charter, civil service system is provided for, not just for fire and police, as we often hear about, but also for nearly all of your civilian employees. That same charter provision already has a list of positions, however, which do not have civil service protection. For example, city manager, division directors, department heads. But this proposition would add 2 more categories of persons to that list of exemptions. The current charter simply says an assistant department head is exempt, but several of our departments have more than one assistant department head. So it would take off the and. Instead of saying an assistant department head, it would just say department heads, however many there are in the department. So that would be one expansion of the list of exemptions. It would expand it from one assistant department head to all assistant department heads. And the second change that this proposition would make would be to exempt licensed professionals, attorneys, accountants, doctors, nurses, engineers, those types of persons who are employed by the city in a professional capacity. They would no longer have civil service coverage. Then finally, Proposition 21, this would be a change to an existing. This would apply to initiative and referendum measures. Currently, the charter requires that petitions have a number of signatures equal to 25% of the number of voters voting in the last regular city election. This would change that requirement to 5% of registered voters inside the city. Mayor, that concludes the presentation of the measures. At the time we went to press with the package, we did have 22. If you look at the draft that's introduced last week, in the draft today, there are 22. But during your work session, there was a consensus to pull off one of the measures, and so I've adjusted the presentation between the workshop and the meeting. It's not to be considered as a decision by you, because you cannot make final decisions in the work session. That just reflects the consensus of the conversation. That proposition and others are certainly available for your consideration today.
Okay, at this point, I believe we would open it up for discussion. Any discussion from the audience about these items? Sir, please come forward. We'd like to ask anyone that comes up to give their name and address and 3 minutes for comments, please.
William Summerford, Potter County, 6103 Blue Sage. What is the reasoning behind shortening the time from 90 days, from 180 days to 90 days, and what is state law on petition time frames?
Mr. City Attorney, would you answer?
Certainly will, Mayor. State law is silent as to how long a petition may be circulated. All state law says is that a signature on a petition expires after 180 days. So in theory, a petition circulator, if they've had their petition out for 6 months, they start losing signatures. If they're gathering more signatures than they're losing, then they're still gaining toward whatever their number is. The rationale for it is that we don't want initiative and referendum to be used to stir up issues endlessly within the community. I'll say again, initiative and referendum traditionally are viewed as extraordinary remedies for extraordinary circumstances, not just for a local minority who disagrees with a particular ruling by the governing body. And so if it's broad-based, highly controversial, the rationale is it ought not to be harder than 90 days to go get the signatures. If one has to drag out a petition for 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, one has to question how burning the issue may be. That's accepted or rejected. That's the rationale.
And what is the norm for initiative referendums across Texas?
I've looked at about 17 different cities, 17 different home rule charters, and it varies across the board. Some has as short as 60 days. Some have as long as 180 days. There are some that have 90 days. There are some that 100 days. I'll be glad to get you that list. Like I say, I looked at about 17 cities. And so this 90-day would put Amarillo, if it were adopted, right about the middle of the pack. We wouldn't be out in front or lagging behind.
And now let's refer down to the last item. 25% of the last regular city election to 5% of registered voters. If my understanding is correct, the 5% is the amount required for a charter amendment. So what you're suggesting is that any kind of city initiative referendum be required to meet the same number of petition signatures as a charter amendment. Is that correct?
Excuse me. That would be correct.
And what is the basis for that?
Sure. As we saw in the most recent situation, when you base the number of signatures on the number of voters who go to the polls and vote, that's subject to manipulation. Whether it's manipulation by a don't vote campaign, or whether it's subject to manipulation by the emotion of a particular issue. You know, some propositions draw out more voters, some elections draw out lesser voters based on the emotion. When we had smoking bans on the ballot, we had more people turn out to vote. And so the idea is that by moving, instead of tying the measure of signatures to something that can be manipulated by emotions or by intentional act of don't go vote, this would be a stable number. It's a more stable index than the number of voters. Because that number is always changing, how many may turn out for a particular city election. Whereas the number of registered voters is a more stable number grows more slowly.
And again, the same kind of question, what do other home rule charter cities do in this regard?
That one is all over the place. Let me grab my other set of notes. In fact, it was very interesting to see what some others were doing. Of the cities I looked at, I've got it in red. Grand Prairie, Texas had the most stringent requirement. They require either 40% of voters in the last city election to sign the petition. 40% who voted in the last city election, ours is 25, or 15% of registered voters. We're proposing 5% of registered voters. From there, it's pretty much all over the scale. Tyler, Texas requires 30% of all registered voters in the city to sign a petition. Lubbock, Texas, they're like us. Killeen is like us, 25%. So there's, Wichita Falls requires 10% of voters in the last city election with a minimum of 3,000. And now I've got some statistics on the average and the mean of this survey.
So with the 5%, does that appear to be high? Does that appear to be low? Or
It's low. I'm sorry, let me focus. Let me just run through that column. Of the cities that I looked at that use a percentage of all registered voters, here's how it ran. Austin, Texas, 5% of registered voters are 20,000. Corpus Christi, 5%. Dallas, 10% of registered voters. Fort Worth, 20% of registered voters. Garland, 10% of registered voters. Grand Prairie, I mentioned, at 15% of registered voters. Tyler at 30% of registered voters. Waco at 15% of registered voters. And the proposition here would be 5%.
so basically, what the city is proposing is to make the initiative and referendum process in Amarillo much more stringent in terms of signature requirements and time requirements.
Compared to what?
Compared to what we're doing right now.
Compared to what we're doing right now, but not compared to other cities. That's correct. We would be on the low end. We would not be nearly as stringent as other Texas cities on terms of the number of signatures, and we would be in the middle of the group in terms of the number of days for circulating the petition. So it depends on your point of measure if you're comparing us to other cities or comparing it to the current 1913 charter.
Mr. Summerberg, Mr. Norris, I'd like to qualify that answer. After the smoking petition, I believe there were 22 or 23,000. For the next 2 years, it would have taken more signatures than this. It would have taken 7,000 or 8,000 signatures to do this. So we're trying to even the playing field. In a very low turnout with nothing basically on the ballot but a mayor's election or something, you could have 5, 4, 7,000 voters. So what this does is, in my view, it allows for the democratic process to be more stable. In other words, somebody can't manipulate the number to benefit their cause. It takes that stable number of registered voters and takes a very, very small percentage, 5%, versus 25% or whatever. So people saw in the last election an opportunity, if we convince people not to go vote, or if people don't go vote, we won't need many petition signatures, which doesn't stand the test of the extraordinary measure for that type of recall. And in my mind, this is a much more fair way, because in those elections, I think that's the election Jim and I came in 04, it would have required, what, 7,000, 8,000 signatures, and now under this current deal with no voter turnout, it requires 1,800 signatures. So much more democratic to not subvert the will of the majority of the voters. And so I think we really found a place to be very low. Others told us, go 10%, go 15. I don't want it to be higher on average. And if you look back at our recall elections that we have had, that number has been kind of middle of the road. So I don't think it's really requiring more at all. I think it's much more fair for both sides of an issue.
Well, this was the reason I came up, is I just wanted to know where Amarillo was relative to other cities across the state of Texas, and I think you've addressed the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sucker. Certainly, and
And as a matter of point of reference, we have roughly 90,000 registered voters.
I believe there's 104,000. It's more than that. It's 104,000 in the city. 104,000.
So,
Yeah.
so 5% would be 5,000.
Yeah. First, though, sir, Commissioner Eads would like to ask for clarification.
What have we spent typically on a city election for an initiative and referendum in the recent past? So $14,000 to $30,000 in recent history. Okay, thank you.
And sir, if you'd come forward, please. I know it's on the record. Would you mind giving your name and address again, sir?
Alan Feingold, 2601 North Grand Street.
Thank you.
I do not regard initiative and referendum as being extraordinary measures. Perhaps somewhat out of the ordinary, but not extraordinary in the sense of an extreme situation. I hope that the city will consider extending that 90-day period to at least 120 days to be allowed for signatures on a petition to the city. I think that constricting it from, or diminishing the number of days so drastically, formally 180, then 90, is too much of a decrease. And I hope that before you put this on the ballot, you will change that to 120 days. I'd also like to ask Mr. Norris whether each of these propositions is going to be voted on separately on the ballot. Good.
They will.
Yes, that's why they're separately numbered propositions, just as we laid them out there.
Thank you very much.
Just to clarify, Mr. Norris, our city charter right now does not specify 180 days, does it? We don't specify anything.
It did not. The current, that's why you saw the recent cell phone, handheld cell phone petition roll out for 8 months, I think it was. Yeah, there is no limit currently in the charter.
The names just drop off after 6 months.
They began losing signatures at the 6-month mark pursuant to state law, the election code, but the petition itself is still valid and outstanding.
So it becomes a problem anyway, because the initiative should get the most signatures early. And as you get 6 months, you're going to lose the most signatures. You have to keep reading it. Yeah, okay. That's okay, are there any other questions from the audience? Then we'd like to open this to the commission and make comments, please.
Sir, I would first like to thank Mr. Norris. He has spent a long time working on this, in fact, years working on this, and has been concerned about it for a long time, and I appreciate the quality of the work he does. He always does good work. I would say to the commission that my initial feeling about Proposition 21, which was the one we were just talking about, was to not support that, but I think on rediscussing it and hearing the public comments and considering the cost of an election is $14,000 to $30,000 to do that, I don't really think that is too high of a bar to ask. And so I would say to my fellow commissioners that is something I would support. I do think a good point was made regarding the 90 days. I do not think it would hurt to offer 120 days. And
I agree.
And I would appreciate the commission considering that as this goes to motion.
I think I would support that change as a discussion point, certainly for others, but I don't want to be restrictive in this in any way. I think that is a good point well made. Anyone else?
I think if there's 5,000 signatures of people who want to go to the polls, we ought to go to the polls. So.
Yeah, but you're saying again.
I'm saying that 5% is not too high. Is a yes.
And we should go to the polls, absolutely should recognize that. But my personal view is that should not be able to be manipulated for somebody's specific purpose. And that just seems so undemocratic to me. It grinds my gut to hear about it. So to encourage people not to go vote so that they could have a preference of a lower threshold for the next 2 years. And yet we have that now where if a lot of people show up, we're actually lowering the number. If we had another smoke, if we had 25,000 people show up, we're lowering the standard. We're actually lowering the number of petitions they need and certainly increasing it in this case when there's no turnout. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Any other comments from the audience? Okay, Mr. Norris, what do we do in the case of this item? How do we deal with it next week?
Well, we would need a motion and a second to approve the ordinance calling a special election for the propositions stated, number 1 through
21.
Well,
Or 22 on there, and then you...
yeah, I would suggest to be a motion to approve the ordinance without Proposition 21 shown in the draft. That's the one that y'all wanted to have pulled earlier. And if there was an interest, I couldn't tell from the discussion, if there was an interest in changing the number of days for petition from 90 days, that would be in Proposition 15. There was a different number in there.
But we act on these as a whole.
Yes.
Okay. Before that's made, I wonder, should we only have the discussion about changing that after that motion? Changing that date from it? Okay. So I'd entertain a motion in regards to ordinance number 7425.
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7425.
A motion, we have a second.
With or without Proposition?
Oh, without Proposition 21 that is included in the current draft.
Okay. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Anyone in the audience would like to further discuss a very important item for the city? We will be 100 years old and only amended this, what, 7 times?
This will be 8.
This will be number 8.
I would like to make an amendment, Mayor.
Certainly, if this is the proper time to do it. We don't do too many minutes, but I encourage that.
Yeah. I would move that rather than using a 90-day cutoff on item number 15, that we strike that and change that to 120 days.
I second that.
Okay. We have a motion, and we have a second. We have an amendment. We vote on the amendment first?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so we have an amendment to that motion. We'll vote on that first. The amendment is to change in number, which number?
Proposition 15.
Proposition 15, to change that to 120 days to allow for the compilation of petitions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. And now we have the general ordinance. I entertain a motion. Well, we have a motion, so I will entertain a vote on that. Is there any other discussion about that? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Thank you all very much for your input. It's very important to us. Thank you, Mr. Feingold. Okay, we have a next item, ordinance number 7426. This is first reading of an ordinance adopting a 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing a levy and annual property assessment for Brennan Boulevard Public Improvement District PID. The Brennan PID is located within the Brennan subdivision of Southwest Amarillo. And do we need any explanation by the audience on that item or by the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 7426.
I second.
The motion is second for ordinance number 7426. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next item, I'm going to recuse myself and turn the meeting over to Commissioner Eads to take care of that motion. I am living in that area and will recuse myself because of that.
Okay, this will be item number 4, ordinance number 7427. This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2003-2014 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing levy and annual property assessment for the Greenways Public Improvement District PID. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Greenways Public Improvement District set of directors. That would be the Public Improvement Board.
And that budget is for years 2013 and 2014. Yeah, 2003.
So that is the ordinance. Are there any comments or anybody who wishes to speak on the Greenways PID in the audience? Yes, sir.
My name is Thomas Schumann. I reside at 7308 Park Ridge Drive. This is the second time in my life I've ever addressed the city commission.
First time was an hour.
Second time late.
Thank you for being here. I'm not supposed to come.
Really, I just want some clarification, and maybe this isn't the correct form to ask these questions. I apologize in advance. I'm curious, we're seeing a 7.5% increase our amount of assessment we're at the greenways. I'm curious what costs are associated with the 7.5% increase. I'm also curious how our assessment compares to some of these other PIDs, and as far as just the actual amount per lot. I'm also curious, we do see other development, new lots being developed at the greenways. Those should be generating more revenue that goes towards the PID, and I'm curious why that didn't offset the need, or why wouldn't that offset the need for the 7.5% raise?
Thank you for your comments. I think I can respond to those.
Okay.
The city's role in the operation of the PIDs is to, A, be the administrator. The PID board is autonomous. They make the decisions. They do that in consultation often with the homeowners association. And so the city really doesn't get involved in that. There are times at which the city will offer indeed to provide that service if the members of the PID would like to do that. Very often what happens is the PID board ends up in consultation with the developer, getting a private entity to come and do that work. So those kind of questions would really be the ones aptly directed towards your PID board, and the person who is in charge is a Kathleen Collins.
That's with the city.
Oh, Kathleen is with the city. Who is head of it? Right here. Ms. Collins, would you come up and visit with us just a little bit about that?
Good afternoon. As far as your question regarding the assessment for properties located within the greenways, we're proposing your lot, depends on what type of lot you live at, but like a B lot will be proposed to be $575 per year, and a comparative lot within the colonies is close to $700 per year. As far as, I'm sorry, can you please repeat those questions that you did ask?
Well, I was curious on, we do have more development going on in the greenways.
Correct.
So doesn't that generate more revenue to the PID? So I'm curious why, if that's generating more revenue, why wouldn't that cover the need for the increase?
Well, you have 28 acres that are within this public improvement district that are green space. And within those 28 acres, we have to maintain, or the public improvement district has to maintain the watering rates and the mowing and that type of contract, as well as this year we're proposing a bond that's going to be issued back to the developer for $700,000. Now this public improvement district was approved with the developer being reimbursed. He paid those costs up front, and the homeowners are now slowly paying those back. And so as lots increase, more money is generated. However, that money that is being generated is not to the extent to pay the bond and the water increases as well.
So the water usage is, and we're not covering our obligation to the developer?
Correct.
Okay.
Did you have any other additional questions?
I think that answered it.
Okay. If you do, please let me know. I'm within the planning department.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Atkinson, did you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
I'd just like to add, Kathleen, appreciate that those are all excellent answers. And sometimes public improvement districts, the structure becomes somewhat layered and leads to questions. Kathleen and her group in the planning department, we serve as the administrative agent for all of the public improvement districts. I believe we have 8 of them now in Amarillo. Each public improvement district has a board of directors, or I'm sorry if we don't call them that anymore. They are the advisory board, but they have an advisory board. Those members all ultimately are confirmed by the city commission, but they're residents of those neighborhoods. The proposals for, we would like to add an amenity, we would like to come in some cases, some of the districts have been there a while, and it's time to begin replacing amenities. That does not originate with the city, that originates with that advisory board. What Kathleen and her group do then is work their way through the finances and say, certainly, now, here's what that will take as far as adjustments to do.
Right. I'm very happy with the way the Greenways is handled. I enjoy living there. But I just don't think I think a lot of people, when they see an increase, they want to complain, and instead of asking, well, why is there an increase, and finding out, that's really why I'm here.
Sure.
I want to know, I just want to know.
Glad you're here.
I'm glad to, and this is, I don't know if I can say this, but that video is what moved me to come up here and talk about that. That was an amazing video.
It was.
You don't object to the mayor moving into your neighborhood?
I don't know.
Can't comment.
As long as it's not next to me.
Take your shots, I can't comment.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment? Sir, I'm sorry, we'll have to have your name and address.
My name is Eddie Scott. I live at 7. Oh. I just moved 2412 Lipscomb. I wanted to live in the Greenways, but I heard the mayor was moving there as well. So, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Plus your new trophy wife had a little say in it also.
Oh, she had a hell of a lot to I appreciate the questions. I don't think most people understand. Maybe everybody does. But when you start a development that has a pit, and I was the first one, really, of any size, I went to John Ward and showed him the master plan, and he loved it. And I said, well, the major part that's going to be in it is going to be city property. I think you need to pay for that. And he said, Daddy, you want to do a master plan, you want to do a development, you can have a pit. Now, to do a pit, here's the way you have to do it. You have to pay for everything that goes within the border of that property. You will have a pit, and you have the privilege of paying for the park, the rights of way, everything in it. And then you also, as soon as you file a piece of paper with Jared and start fighting with him over the timing when you can develop it and get it sold, but you're spending money the whole time, I'm paying those bid dues. So I install the property, and I'm paying the money that helps it operate until such time as I can sell the lots. Now, I mean, everybody thinks it's easy being a developer. I used to be in Marcus's profession, and I thought, well, I need to do something a little more exciting. Little did I know I was going to become the Lone Ranger and do stuff. But the point of the fact is we do pay, and we continue to work to lower the cost. There's no advantage to me to raising the fees because I pay them. Up until a few years ago, I paid more in PID dues than all the other residents put together. And I think that was like 3.5 years ago. I used to keep track of it. But to raise dues $10, and I've developed 100 lots, that's another. You're the mathematician. How much is that? That's good. I appreciate that. But that's the way they worked. And we're almost, we're down to what, 200 lots left to develop, something like that. And then we'll be through. We're real proud of the Greenways. I'm very happy to have you out there. Thank you. Can I make you a spokesman?
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other comments from the audience on this issue? From the commission? And may I have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve ordinance number 7427.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Very good. That passes by a 4-0-1 vote.
Okay, next item is ordinance number 7428. This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, allowing for the establishment and levy of an annual property assessment for Quail Creek Public Improvement District PID. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Quail Creek Public Improvement Board. Are there any explanations needed by the audience for this item or by the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 7428.
I second.
A motion and a second for ordinance number 7428. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7429. This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment in the Vineyards Public Improvement District PID. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Vineyards Public Improvement Board. Are there any questions about this item from the audience or from the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of ordinance number 7429.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of ordinance number 7429. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7421. This is the second and final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying the annual property assessment for the Colonies Public Improvement District bid. Are there any questions about this item from the audience or from the commission? If not, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 7421.
I second.
Motion and a second for ordinance number 7421. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7422 is the second final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Points West Public Improvement District bid. Are there any questions about this from the audience or from the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7422.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance number 7422. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7423 is the second final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2013-14 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Redstone bid. Are there any questions about this item from the audience? From the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will move for approval of ordinance number 7423.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance number 7423. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. This is the second final, this is a correction, but it's the second final reading of an ordinance adopting 2014 budget and 5-year service plan for, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Tutbury Public Improvement District. Are there any questions about this item from the audience? From the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of ordinance number 7424.
The motion and second for ordinance number 7424. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. We've already dealt with number 11. We'll move on to 12, resolution, Texas Water Development Board application for financial assistance. This resolution authorizes the submission of an application for financial assistance to the Texas Water Development Board for an amount not to exceed $8,505,000. The application requests financial assistance for the construction, improvement, and extension of the Amarillo sewer system. The application is for both design and construction of the Georgia Street wastewater interceptor line and for the design of lift station number 32 project. Are there any questions about this item from the audience, from the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we submit an application to the Texas Water Development Board for financial assistance.
I second.
Motion and a second for item number 12 on the agenda, the resolution about water board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Consent agenda. It's recommended the following items be approved, that the city manager be authorized to execute all documents necessary for each transaction. Item A is the award of playground purchase and installation in 2 parks. B is the award of self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA repair parts supply agreement. C is the approval of transportation project grant agreement. D is the approval agreement of architectural services. Is there any item that need to be removed for separate consideration by the commission? If not, entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by the audience? Commission? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. We have a presentation and discussion of the Every Drop Counts 2013. The presentation provides an overview of Amarillo water usage and the conservation goals and activities of 2013 Every Drop Counts campaign. I think you have good news for us. Would you come forward?
It's younger, more handsome in it.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
We can say that because we're down to the stalwarts.
Obviously, the crowd wasn't here to hear that.
Yeah.
No, we wore them out for you, sir.
Really, the July weather have any sustained periods of high production. We had a high day in there of 84.5 million gallons per day. I believe that was on July 11th. But I would classify the month of July as a mixture of sun and rain. Here's our standard chart that we present to you. We had some rains leading up to that, so you can see a drop in our consumption, which is represented by the blue line there. And like I said, I believe it was July 11th was our peak day of 84.5 million gallons a day, which is a pretty good day. Next slide. Here's the drought monitor. We had just a very, very slight easing of the drought here, but really nothing to speak of, and I don't want to lead you astray that we're getting out of the drought or anything. Next one. And this shows our temperatures, how they range throughout the month of July. We were actually still a little bit above normal in our temperatures, but fairly moderate, just an average of about 1 degree over normal. That's the end of this presentation. Any questions?
During the work session, I was asking, you didn't know, I was wondering if you found out between work session and now, like where we are on rainfall.
Yes. 2013 to date, 11.21 inches, and normal would be 13.73 inches.
So we're still...
Yeah, about 2.5 inches down. Now, last year at this time, we were 7.74 inches.
Wow.
So we're significantly better than last year.
Years ago, we were around 5, 4.
Right.
Yeah. We're better.
Thank you.
Tim, thank you very much. We love hearing those kinds of reports. Okay. Well, that concludes the regularly scheduled agenda for the Amarillo City Commission today. We'll move back to executive session as soon as this is over. It's our customary at this time to allow citizens of the community with matters pertaining to city policy, programs, and services, but not on the agenda today, to speak to the commission. And the floor is now open for such comments. Anybody like to, please, sir? You have been extremely patient today.
I feel for you guys. My name is Walter Wolfram. I reside at 6714 West Hollywood Road in Amarillo, Texas. I'm an elected official of the APWU Local 114. That's the Postal Service here in Amarillo. If you'll bear with me for just a little bit, I've got about 4 pages I'd like to read and let you all see what's happening. The Commission is aware that the United States Postal Service is involved in a study to determine the feasibility of shutting down the mail processing plant in Amarillo, transporting said mail to Lubbock for processing, and returning it to Amarillo for delivery. The current proposal processing plant consolidation study by the UPS is biased against Amarillo and favors Lubbock, Texas. Requires outlays of UPS funds to build, buy, or lease another facility in Lubbock. Removes the last mail processing plant in the 13th District of Texas, will have a negative impact on the tourism development for the city of Amarillo. Stopping this consolidation will take an immediate effort by the Amarillo community, including political, civic, and business leaders, to convince our U.S. senators from Texas to intervene against the USPS and halt this consolidation study. The following areas of interest include, for your information and consideration: loss of the postmark, revenue generated by Amarillo businesses, economic impact on the city of Amarillo, facilities comparisons, distance and transportation concerns, and the effectiveness of USPS area mail processing studies. First, loss of the postmark. Cancellation operation shifted to Lubbock would cause the elimination of the Amarillo cancellation postmark. Tourism is a major part of the economic life of Amarillo. Postcards and mailing from the tourists coming to Amarillo is important to the marketing of the area. A Route 66 postcard, Cadillac Ranch postcard, or Big Texan State Ranch House postcard with the Lubbock cancellation sends the wrong message. Cancellation for the Amarillo Civic Center, AGM, Theater, and Performing Arts, and the new and upcoming downtown sports complex will have Lubbock's name appear and not Amarillo's on tourist mailings going back to the tourist family and friends across the country and the world. Wherever the tourist resides is counterproductive to the Amarillo brand. Revenue. USPS has been requested to furnish updated revenue figures for the Amarillo and Lubbock plant in its business mail entry unit from October 1st, 2013. From October 1st, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. Although not provided by the U.S. Postal Service at this date, EPW Local 114's figures indicate Amarillo's bulk business mail sales, that's millions of dollars, are significantly greater than Lubbock's. The bulk business mailing sales do not include those sales of stamps and other services provided through retail stores. No, the USPS discontinued disclosing Amarillo sales and revenue figures to Amarillo National Bank, Amarillo's economic pulse, over 2 years ago. Economic impact. The loss of Amarillo's processing and distribution plant ends the presence of postal processing in the U.S. 13th Congressional District. This loss consists of over 80 jobs directly associated with mail processing, plus an additional 16 jobs for mail handlers, 40 maintenance and technical qualified positions, as well as processing plant supervisors, managers, and support staff. The conservative estimate salary loss to the 13th District in Amarillo is in excess of $5 million annually. And Amarillo will lose the 7 to 10 times multiplication effect of $5 million that would have circulated throughout the community. Facilities. The size of the Amarillo postal plant located at 2301 Ross is available from the Potter Randall Crazy site with usable square footage figures for plant operation at over 180,000 square feet, plus office and sales space. The size of the Lubbock sorting center located at 1550 Crickets Avenue, Lubbock, Texas, is not provided in the description to the Lubbock Council Appraisal District. Would you like me to stop?
Sir, how much longer do you feel you have?
I've got probably another 3 minutes. Or I have this printed out if you'd rather read it.
Well, it might be good to read it. We did see the notice in the paper. Certainly, I'd have to ask staff, Mr. City Manager, other than our individual influence with representatives, is there anything that we can do with this? We've certainly seen it and have a concern. Don't know how realistic it is for them to even consider doing this.
The reason I'm bringing this up is they won't listen to us. And what I'm asking for is the business community leaders and political leaders and civic leaders to contact their U.S. senator. Let me read one piece. It'll help.
Sure, go ahead, sir.
The Area Mail Processing Studies, Transformation of Our Business, the USPS publication lists the current status of plant consolidation to the United States Post Office across the United States. 321 that were started, Amarillo and Midland included, 291 are approved or implemented. The USPS track record of 90% consolidation or closures of postal service processing plants is dauntingly impressive. Once set into motion, the consolidation process is quick. It leaves little time to gather information or garner public support for retaining a state facility. However, 28 consolidated efforts have been successfully halted. And the way they were halted is with the U.S. senators halting that process. Where I'm at now is to garner your support in contacting our 2 U.S. senators.
I'd love to have the information from you. I certainly don't want to see that closed in our town.
The 100th anniversary would be it'd be awkward not to have a cancellation.
Tell you what, if you could give that to the officer, he'll be sure that we get it.
And there's also thankful we've asked for information from the United States Postal Service. It's been over 45 days, they have not furnished anything.
If you would like to contact me individually, I'm very available. In fact, I'll come around and give you my card. But I think that individually, and certainly as a city, we don't want to see that happen. So.
I'm here to represent the city.
Thank you for your time.
Mayor, may I ask a question? Sure. How are you related to Walter Wolfram, the attorney?
I'm better looking.
Are y'all the second, the third, and fourth?
Well, actually, it's my ugly brother. It's his partner in law.
Eric?
Eric. And,
okay.
So
I didn't know there was 2 Walter Wolframs in the world. I was trying to figure out.
There are people that are trying to solve that problem.
Now, which one are they after, you or your dad? Either one. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your concern. Please, we'll be in touch. Are there any other comments from anyone? Now we'll move back to the executive session. Thank you all for your patience.